Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, my dear viewers. This is your host, Salahuddin Choudhry, placing before you another very important subject, and that concerns the talk on the matter which is entitled By the People, of the People, for the people. Democracy really matters. That is the caption of today's talk your host is presenting before you, my dear viewers. But before I go ahead with the talk, I would like to tell you this talk is divided into two parts. The first part I have for you today, and the second part will be tomorrow, all right, in the next segment. Before going on to my narrative on the topic of democracy, I wish to make a quick mention of another matter which I consider important and relevant to democracy for my good viewers to delve into the unresolved case of the state of Junagadh, situated in southwest India with 150 kilometers Arabian Sea coastline, some 812 kilometers from Karachi. It was a princely state in Indian Gujarat ruled by well-revered Muslim Babi dynasty in British India. A 15-gun salute, Junagadh, comprising a territory of 8,643 square kilometers, merged with Pakistan upon partition of India on the 15th of September 1947. That is just about a month later when Pakistan came into being on the 14th of August. Now, this was done on that particular day, 15th of September, through an instrument of accession signed by Nawab of Junagadh with the then Governor General Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. But during Nawab Muhammad Khan Ji's official visit to Karachi in November 1947, India, like in the case of former East Pakistan, applied economic blockade of Junagadh, sparking chaos, which was used as a pretext by India to launch a military intervention early November 47 and to illegally occupy the state of Junagadh in clear violation of Pakistan government territory or the Pakistani territory. Unfortunately, efforts by the then government of Pakistan, including the raising of the case of the issue in the United Nations, did not yield any favorable result, lo and behold, unfortunately. Under the international law, the instrument of accession is a valid treaty. Till today, it is valid till today, and hence Junagadh certainly is a part of Pakistan, whether someone or somebody or some country likes it or not. It issued a political map on 4th August 2020, just last year. The Pakistan government issued a political map on the 4th of August 2020 showing Junagadh as part of Pakistan. The idea was to keep the issue alive. But Pakistan has to go after it through all means available, but they are not happening. They are not happening, unfortunately. The efforts, whether they are not, whether it's happening, the result is still nil. The most unique and exemplary aspect of the accession to Pakistan was the democratic norm used to develop consensus through a robust consultation with Junagadh Multi-Religious State Council. That was democratic. The validity of the instrument of accession and reinvigoration of the case by the Foreign Office of ours captured the passion of the participants of academics, social scientists, researchers and intellectuals in a national conference held on 14th of September, just about a few days back, by the Muslim Institute, Islamabad, initiated and chaired by its chairman and Diwan of Junagadh. Well, that's the story because it happened, so I thought I would quote it to you, and because this is in the context of democracy and International Day of Democracy taking place or took place on the 15th of September. Viewers, both young and adult, let's turn to my talk today as captioned, as I said earlier, by the people, of the people, for the people. Democracy really matters. At the outset, let's try to understand what is meant by democracy. Well, democracy is a universal value based on the freely expressed will of people to determine their own political, economic, social and cultural systems and their full participation in all aspects of life. Democracy really literally means rule by the people. Democracy literally means rule by the people. The term is derived from the Greek demokratia or demokratia, which was coined from demos meaning people and kratos meaning rule, that is, rule by the people. Demos kratos. Okay? In the middle of the 5th century BC, to denote the political systems then existing in some Greek city-states, notably Athens. The concepts of democracy and constitution as a form of government originated in ancient Athens circa 508 BC, as earlier told, contrasted with governance by elites, which was regarded as autocracy or aristocracy, by one person, that is monarchy, and by tyrants, that is tyranny. Well, and a number of other ways. So, aristocracy, monarchy and tyranny. Okay. The link between democracy and human rights. Now this is important. Human rights. Democracy is interlinked with human rights. So the link between democracy and human rights is clearly stipulated in the Article 21/3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All right, this is the United Nations Declaration. Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that is, quote unquote, the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. This will shall be expressed in periodic and genuine election. Important. Will, people, elections. Genuine election which shall be by universal and equal suffrage, that is voting election, all right? Equal suffrage, and shall be held by secret ballot. Secret ballot. Secret ballot is very important. Or by equivalent free voting procedures. So whatever the system, it has to be free. It should be secret. That's probably one basic pillar. So that was the one which was covered by the Universal Declaration. The values of freedom, respect for human rights, and the principle of holding periodic and genuine elections by universal suffrage are essential elements of democracy for the protection and effective realization of human rights. These values are embodied in the Declaration and further developed in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which includes a host of political rights and civil liberties underpinning meaningful democracies. The rights are enshrined in the Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights and subsequent human rights instruments covering group rights, that is, indigenous peoples, minorities, people with disabilities, are equally essential, very, very essential, and equally essential for democracy, as they ensure an equitable distribution of wealth and equality and equity in respect of access to civil and political rights. The end of the First World War saw a temporary victory for democracy in Europe, as it was preserved in France and extended to Germany. Earlier, in 1906, full modern democratic rights, universal suffrage for all citizens, got implemented constitutionally in Finland, as well as a proportional representation therein, and the February Revolution in Russia in 1917, with few months of liberal democracy at that time, only for a few months. Probably it was experimental. The Great Depression, I'm sure most of you, my dear viewers, would know about it. The Great Depression at that time hurt democratic forces in many, many countries. And in the 1930s became a decade of dictators in Europe. A decade for about 10 years or more. The period of dictatorships in Europe and Latin America. In 1918, the United Kingdom granted the women over 30 the right to vote as part of democracy. And in 1958, women and men both were granted equal rights. The French women got voting right. It's interesting. The French women got voting right in 1944, as late as 1944, just about the last year of the Second World War. The Second World War was ultimately a victory for democracy in Western Europe. Many countries of Central and Eastern Europe became undemocratic Soviet satellite states, and several authoritarian dictatorships in Southern Europe like Spain and Portugal. Now, my dear viewers, to carry on with my narrative, democracy is a system of government where representatives are voted into office by the peoples of a country, that is, the citizens. In true democracy, citizens can take an active role in their government and hold them to account by voting them out. See, so if they're not performing well, you can vote them out. Not very difficult, but of course by the majority or whatever the system is. Direct democracies allow every person to vote on important issues, whereas representative democracies are made up of elected representatives who vote. The UK, the United Kingdom, is a representative democracy. Democracy is linked to human rights, as emphasized earlier. Democracy is linked to human rights and aims to ensure that everyone in a society is represented regardless of skin, color, sex, sexual orientation, religion, ability, or a wide range of other things. And democracy should ensure that governments protect their people. True democracy is a two-way street. True democracy is a two-way street built on a constant dialogue between civil society, and this is important, dialogue between civil society and the political class. There has to be continuous dialogue. This International Day, and as I said, we are celebrating the whole world. This International Day for Democracy is an opportunity to urge all governments to respect their citizens' right to active, substantive, and meaningful participation in a democracy. International Day of Democracy is an opportunity to assess, like human rights, to assess issues like human rights, equality, and conflict resolution throughout the world. It is a chance to reflect on our freedoms and think about those who are less fortunate, those who are less fortunate than us. It also highlights that democracy needs the participation of all citizens. Again, I repeat it, the participation of all citizens, that is democracy, and encourages action and motivates people to work collectively for a fairer and more representative government. Since its foundation, the United Nations Organization seeks to promote the aspirations of all people, especially young women and men, to strive for the realization of shared universal values. Important. Universal values, individual values, human values, such as tolerance, pluralism, the respect of human rights, freedom, and dialogue. All these phrases, they're not just cliches, they're an important part of democracy, democratic system. On this day again, ladies and gentlemen, we are celebrating more than a simple principle of political organization. We are celebrating an ideal whose foundations are the dignity, equality, and mutual respect of people. The very foundations of the Constitution of UNESCO, according to Director General Audrey Azoulay. The whole para that I mentioned has been, has been a narrative of the UNESCO Director General. Right. International Day of Democracy, IDD, is celebrated on the 15th of September, as told earlier, and it provides an opportunity to review the state of democracy in the world. Democracy is as much a process as a goal, and only with the full participation of and support by the international community, national governing bodies, civil society, and individuals can the ideal of democracy be made into a reality to be enjoyed by everyone, everywhere. In this year, 2021, democracy is envisaged to ensure the smooth implementation of human rights, fundamental rights of freedom, expression, and voting rights. Regrettably, in Pakistan, it's a far cry. A lot of things are not happening the way they should be. Celebrations vary across different corners of the world. Both governments, associated, and NGOs hold special events to promote democracy initiatives. They urge people to bring in the whole philosophy of democracy into their ruling. This is important. It's like a philosophy, traits, values, qualities, etc. So, key discussion notes by eminent speakers are an important part of the day's proceedings. Press conferences inviting stalwarts across various functionaries to represent the meaning and approach to democracy highlight the day. These are the elements which are the highlights of the day. The celebrations also include endorsing justice principles in many ways, using placards, posters, charts, banners, public display boards, and so on. On this day, the role of educators, very, very important, role of educators, the people who are teachers, the training. The role of teachers or educators is taken as very, very significant. People serving in the education field, like professors, teachers, lecturers, they all play a crucial role in transforming democracy in any country. Places of educational excellence and academic institutes hold special programs to propagate the need for democracy and pursue democratic principles in today's world. Further, this day is observed on an international platform to identify and introspect, look within, introspect on the features that are straining and difficulties that are straining the promotion of democracy, creating hurdles. Humans' most basic rights are their air, food, water, shelter, and clothing claims. Apart from these fundamental rights, associated rights like freedom of expression, related rights like freedom of expression, citizenship rights, and voting rights are some of the most elementary requirements. People can voice their troubles and provide their feedbacks only when they have the privilege to do so. The governments grant this privilege. So, in a way, the government should be a consortium of people's representatives. So, the government is just not a single-handed or single person or two person. It has to be a consortium of people's representatives who are responsible for running the government in a citizen-friendly manner. Each year highlights a specific theme of the International Day of Democracy. Past themes have included stronger democracies, importance of democracy for the 2030 agenda of SDGs for sustainable development, as I said, strengthening the voices of citizens, dialogue, and inclusiveness. Another important part, inclusiveness, accountability, and political tolerance. Tolerance is another very important key as a value. The 2019 theme for Democracy Day was participation. All citizens, all people to participate in the process, in the flourishing of democracy. An opportunity to recall that democracy is about people. Democracy is about people, of the people, by the people, for the people. The year 2020 theme was COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic, a spotlight on democracy. This is where we all in the world learned, and first we saw the need, then we will learn how to face it, how to battle COVID-19 out of the system. This year, the 2021 theme is strengthening democratic resilience in the face of future crisis. Strengthening democratic resilience in the face of future crisis. Very important. I mean, this is a very important motto, a very important slogan. Democracy is the freedom to express oneself. Freedom to express oneself. Time and again I've been saying it. And everywhere this is the meaning of the value of democracy. So, democracy is a freedom to express oneself, express one's thoughts and feelings. It is a freedom to stand up for one's views and opinions and choose the right perspectives over the wrong ones. The right perspectives over the wrong ones. Democratic framework gives importance to values such as tolerance and freedom of expression. Now, many of the targets of SD goal number 16, that is Sustainable Development goals as set out by the United Nations. Goal number 16 are geared towards protecting democratic institutions, including rule of law at national and international levels and equal access to justice for all to be maintained. Corruption and bribery to be reduced in all their forms. Effective, accountable, and transparent institutions to be developed at all levels. Responsive, inclusive, participatory, and representative decision making to be ensured at all levels. Public access to information and protect fundamental freedoms to be guaranteed in accordance with national legislation and international agreements. Now, my dear viewers, the UN, that is the United Nations, promotes good governance, monitors elections, supports the civil society to strengthen democratic institutions and accountability, ensures self-determination in decolonized countries, and assists in the drafting of new constitutions. The UN also helps in that context, the drafting of new constitutions in post-conflict nations. While democracies share common features, there is no single model of democracy, and that democracy does not belong to any country or a region. Democracy is a universal value based on the freely expressed will of people to determine their own political, economic, social, and cultural systems, and their full participation in all aspects of life, like I said earlier. Now, in September 1997, the Inter-Parliamentary Union, IPU, adopted a Universal Declaration of Democracy. That declaration affirms the principles of democracy, the elements and exercise of democratic government, and the international scope of democracy. It's all combined, all together. The IPU has urged parliaments to celebrate the International Day of Democracy through some form of special activity to be held on or close to 15th of September. It is depending, of course, on circumstances. It varies from country to country. The day would be an opportunity for parliaments to emphasize the importance of democracy, what it involves, the challenges it faces, as well as the opportunities it offers, and the central responsibility that all parliaments have as a key institution of democracy, and to examine and discuss how well Parliament performs its democratic functions, possibly on the basis of a self-assessment, and identify what steps it may take to strengthen its effectiveness. This is the real need in Pakistan also. Democracy Day is also a time to review the state of democracy around the world. This year, we are focusing on the importance of parliamentary oversight, a core function of parliaments and a vital part of the checks and balances. Checks and balances, very important in any healthy democracy. But if parliamentary oversight did not exist, what then? If it does not exist, the people through their representatives in parliament would not be able to hold the government to account. MPs would not be able to assess the impact of government action on society, to help ensure that appropriate resources are provided to implement government programs, monitor commitments made, or identify the unintended or negative effects of government policy or actions. So all these elements, part of democracy, the values are very, very important. So oversight is equally important. Therefore, I have mentioned it and highlighted this particular aspect in my narrative. So, I am your host, Ambassador Salahuddin Choudhry, saying thanks a million to my patient viewers and for today's first part on democracy. Salam and peace to all families, youngsters, and all of you watching Penta-S Sal Soul channel. Allah Hafiz.